Hello everyone, it is I7s, and we are back in the Brute Force Guide. This is Module 7.0, Power Generators. For this particular episode, we're going to be going over the different kinds of generators, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. If you've not seen my guide videos before, I tried to get straight to the point and answer things in a non-sciencey kind of way, so we're going to be doing just that. I'm going to brush over generators roughly, and then maybe in future episodes under this module be in more detail about the different generators. I'm also going to go over the ones that I particularly use, so let us get started. I put all the generators that are in Oxygen I included right here in front of me, at least the ones that I could recall and put together like this. As we go through each of these, there's something I want you to keep in mind, and that is, am I going to run out of the resource needed to run the generator? Just keep that in the back of your mind. So let us get started. The very first generator is the manual generator. It gives you 400 watts of power, and it requires a duplicate to run around in it. I recommend this generator only at the very beginning, so that you can go and research and make food and other buildings power other ones like that. The next one is the coal generator. I also recommend this one. It provides 600 watts of power. At the beginning, duplicates do need to provide it coal, and later on you can have shipping things like the auto sweeper deliver it coal. The thing to keep in mind with all of these generators, but including this one, is that it can produce heat, as well as this one in particular can cause CO2 to go in the environment. Too much CO2 can lead to other problems. And like with most things in Oni, if you solve one thing, another problem is going to come up. The next one is the wood burner. I personally do not use this one, and I do not recommend this one. This might be old advice, but I remember a lot of other content creators talk about this particular one and how it's not all that useful. It generates 300 watts, and as the name implies, you need to use lumber to be able to get power out of this one. Because I don't use this one, I don't actually know what it produces. Here we go. Carbon dioxide and heat. Pretty much the same as the coal generator. Doesn't say heat, but it does cause heat. With the wood burner, you can use another setup later on that I'll show you instead. That'll generate you more power. But it does likely cause more issues to your base that you have to manage. But personally, I would just skip the wood burner. The next one is a hydrogen generator. I like the hydrogen generator. It is one that I will occasionally use in my current live stream that I highly recommend anyone to go see. It's fantastic. I love it. Anyways, yes, back on this one. I do not have a setup for this one, but I have the capacity to have a setup for this one if I wanted to. As the name implies, it requires hydrogen to be able to give you power, and it provides 800 watts of power. You could put in the hydrogen right here. And as it says right here, it emits next to no waste. It's quite efficient. I do like this one. Next up is one of my favorite ones, the natural gas generator. As the name implies, it requires natural gas. You can pump in the natural gas right here, but with this vent, another thing to keep in mind, unlike the ones we've looked at before, is that this one requires a vent out, because with the natural gas generator it produces carbon dioxide. The coal generator produces carbon dioxide as well, but in the general environment, whereas this one needs a dedicated vent pipe out to deal with it, so keep that in mind. It also produces polluted water, but unlike having a pipe where it can just come out, it'll come out right here. Because of that, you are probably going to want to have this one built where you have something like the mesh tile where the liquid goes straight down, and then you can use that liquid for something else. It produces 800 watts of power, and again, this is one that I do like to use. This goes a little bit beyond the scale of this episode, but some of these, like the hydrogen generator and the natural gas generator, you can fuel them, give them the resource that they need through geysers, which will produce either hydrogen for hydrogen and natural gas for the natural gas geyser. It'll produce that resource, and then you can just bring it straight in, and that resource is essentially infinite. It does have a dormancy, all that jazz. So it's good to find those geysers early in your colony so that you can power your colony. But yes, I do like the natural gas generator. The next one is the petroleum generator. The petroleum generator requires petroleum or ethanol in order to make power. It makes 2,000 watts of power. It's important to note that it also produces carbon dioxide and polluted water. And I don't have the numbers, but it makes a lot of carbon dioxide. Another thing to keep in mind with this one is that out of personal experience, this one produces a lot of heat. Here's the numbers for that, if you want to deal with that. In comparison, the natural gas generator makes way less. Because of that, I've seen more expert ONI players capable of managing the heat for this better using complex other builds. But personally, I would prioritize the natural gas generator or even the hydrogen generator before diving into this one. And because it makes so much power, if you do decide to use this one, then you probably should use this one sparingly, just out of personal recommendation. You may have also noticed that it produces carbon dioxide and polluted water. For the carbon dioxide part, it does kind of like what the coal generator does, and it produces it in the environment. It does not have a port. To feed it the ethanol or petroleum, you just put it right here with a pipe. And it also produces right here polluted water. It'll come straight out right here. So you would want to do this as well, just like with a natural gas generator. And then you'll be good to go. Now, I mentioned earlier about the wood burner and how personally a lot of people just skip over this one and don't use it. The thing with lumber is you can refine it. You can use this building called the ethanol distiller, which is under refinement. The ethanol distiller requires 240 watts of power to use. And with it, you can refine wood into ethanol. And when you do, it'll produce ethanol right here, which you can then use a pipe to bring down and feed it in here. If we do a quick math, it'll make a positive, just using these two, 1,760. Yes, I did that in my head. Okay. Positive power, with just these two. But it's also important to note that with the ethanol distiller, it too can produce heat in the environment. It also has the nice benefit of making polluted dirt, which can be used for something else. And it also produces carbon dioxide. So both of these will make carbon dioxide in the environment. So keep that in mind if you're using this kind of setup. And you might have to use other setups and things to help control the heat of both of these. So to final recap on both of these, I will use these sparingly. I use one setup. Maybe it has like 2 or 3 ethanol distillers and then one of these in my base. And that's pretty much it. So yes, I do not use the wood burner because I rather use this setup. Moving right along, we have the steam turbine. The steam turbine can make 850 watts of power. But it's important to note the following thing about the steam turbine that sets it a bit apart from the rest of the other generators. The steam turbine is built where it has 5 little vents, I guess you could call them, right below it, right below a block. And that's because in this space right here, you would need steam. It draws in steam from the tiles directly below the machine's foundation and uses it to generate electrical power. It also outputs water. And although it says 850 watts of power can be generated from it, it's important to note that the steam in this space down below, right here, has to be of a high enough temperature. I believe it's 125 degrees Celsius that the steam has to be in. And if it's hotter, it'll work as well. And it will suck up the steam, and as long as it's sucking up enough steam at enough high of a temperature, it'll make this amount of power. But it can also make, and you can see it recorded here, less than that amount of power. This is oftentimes used in more complex setups. such as using a thermo aqua tuner, and this can be used to help cool your base, again, beyond the scale of this particular episode. But on its own, generally for newcomers, the steam turbine, aside from the cooling loop, is not generally used for other small things to power your base. More complex builds, like using a geothermal spike, I believe is what they call it, where you basically use the heat from the core of your asteroid to then turn water into steam, can be used to help generate power for your base, and I have that in my live stream series. But in general, for newcomers, I do not recommend just jumping into using the steam turbine, except for the cooling loop. As I said before, it outputs water, which means you will need a pipe from right here off to go somewhere. For the cooling loops, it kind of looks like this, oftentimes used. It is recommended to use radiant pipe to cool the steam turbine, but that again is beyond the scale of this video. I have put some steam in here, so let's see what happens. Because of the temperature, it's sucking up some of the heat, but then the temperature has gone down because it's not hot enough in this room. I will go ahead and fill it up in more steam. Alright, there we go. Pretty well. It's gonna eventually shut off, as you can tell right here. But yeah, it fluctuates with how much power it's generating. As you can see right now, it's producing 361 watts. So yeah, this one fluctuates. Moving right along to my other favorite one is the solar panel. Solar panel also fluctuates, but can make 380 watts of power. I'm playing on spaced out, which does change the amount of power it can make. Looking right here, I've built several solar panels, and they are making about 148 watts of power at this moment. They require being built above your asteroid, and that's because it requires light in order for them to, well, make power. I do not personally recommend making all of these like I have done here, but this is just an experimental colony for showing you guys this guide series. But I do tend to use several, maybe more than what people recommend. And that's because I do actually like the fact that they make free power. You don't really need to worry about heat. No other inputs are needed, just light. But when the colony enters, well, I guess at night, when it goes into night mode, whatever you want to call it, it will no longer make power during that time, so keep that in mind. So to recap real quick, I use a manual generator to start, and then I quickly transition to the coal generator. I skip the wood burner. Hydrogen generator is nice. The natural gas generator is really nice. I primarily use that one. I use a petroleum generator with the ethanol distiller sparingly. I use a steam turbine in complex builds, and I supplement everything with the solar panel generator as much as I can. Now, we're going to talk about batteries, and then we're going to talk about that question I told you to think about resources and if you're going to run out. At the beginning, you will probably just have the battery and the jumbo battery. You can see how much they're charged here, as well as here. All of the batteries, including the smart battery, will slightly lose charge over time. The regular battery can hold 10 kilojoules, yes, of power. The jumbo battery can hold 40, and the smart battery can hold 20. They can all produce heat. They all should be cooled. I primarily just use the smart battery personally. The thing that is cool about the smart battery is that you can use one of the very easy bits of automation with with certain generators. So for example, if you do this, not in this weird kind of way, but essentially if you connect these together like so, boom, like that, and then you toggle this to a low threshold. Let's say you only want it to activate when it's at 20% power. What will happen is when the power, let's pretend it's at 100%, and then it goes down to 20. When it goes down to 20, this wire will turn green, and it'll demand the coal generator to activate, and it'll start eating the coal and producing power. Once it reaches 100, then this will turn off, and it'll stay off until it reaches 1920 for the low threshold. And you can adjust this. This is a great way to not just burn excess coal. The great thing about the smart battery is it can work with the hydrogen generator, the natural gas generator, I suppose the wood burner, but I skipped that. I don't know why you would do it with a manual generator. You could do it with a petroleum generator. You can do it with the steam turbine. Yes, you can. So that's, useful. But you cannot do it with the solar panel. But personally, I don't know why you would do that. In my base, I only have smart batteries. I like them. They're kind of nice. They look cool. You can have several of them. If you have them all on the same line, you can do that too, or different lines. But yes, this one I prefer. These are just used at the beginning when starting out in Oni. Now that we covered all that, we're going to wrap up with that question about running out of resources. Yes, you can really run out of resources, and yes, it can be really, really bad. I'm not going to go over every single way to renew your resources, but I'm going to go over it briefly in broad strokes, specifically with the generators that I like. As I showed you with the low threshold and the high threshold, if you had a few other batteries like these two right here, you can set them at a different threshold. So let's set the one on the left to 55, and let's set the one on the right to about 79. So we have 25, 55, 79. The significance of this is, let us pretend, actually I'm going to hook it all up so we can really prove the point. We're going to hook up all this, but I'm not going to hook it up to that. And then we'll hook these up too. Okay. All of them are now hooked up to a wire. Because this one on the left is set to 75, when the entire power line gets down really low, it'll trigger the coal generator. Now let's pretend that we want the middle power to be the hydrogen generator. I say middle because it's set at about the middle point of the possible thresholds, 55. And then finally, let's set this one all the way up to the natural generator with the low threshold at 79. If the total power, since all these are connected, first go down to 79, it'll use natural gas. Then when it gets down to 55, it will use hydrogen. And then when it gets down all the way to 25, it'll use coal. I like this setup personally, set up this way. Even though I don't use hydrogen generators in my current colony, this is a nice setup. And the reason you want to do this is back to that question. By doing this, you are, with the assumption that you have a lot of natural gas, you are primarily burning natural gas first. Then when you start running low on that, you start burning hydrogen, and then when you're running really low on that, you will start burning coal. You can make more coal besides just digging around. You can make more coal by having a hatch farm. You can get more hydrogen with a hydrogen geyser, and you can get more natural gas with a natural gas geyser. But some of these things can have delays, which is why it's good to kind of stagger your power production in this way. On top of all of that, if you do connect it to a solar panel that is working, that can even further help you save your resources on all of these. And if you add in the petroleum generator, that can even further keep your resources nice and topped up. So remember, two things. When you have power generators, they can cause problems, like they can create heat and carbon dioxide. And the other thing you're going to want to remember is that you can easily run out of resources with any of these. So it's important to think about how are you going to make more of that resource to power your different generators. Well, I hope this solves at least some of your power questions. I've lightly touched over all of this stuff. In future episodes within this module, we'll go over more about these generators and setting up different power wire lines, and we'll talk about power banks and transformers. But for this one, I really just wanted a quick snapshot over all the generators. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you guys in the next one.